Okay, we're at the HVAC indoor air handler here. Okay. And what we're seeing, we'll just start with the furnace, and we'll go to the cooling system, and then the duct system, or at least part of the duct system. This is the indoor air handler in the closet. Okay, our closet ceiling is missing. That means our fire blocking is missing, which ironically we're supposed to have ventilation coming from the attic. So we're supposed to have some ventilation. And what's that I see up there? That's kind of interesting. So it has some ventilation, but it's not supposed to be open like that. And if it's open like that, well then our furnace flue, but it doesn't have a thimble. Okay. So now our flue, I realize this is kind of a short run, but our flue is supposed to always have positive pitch in the direction of the airflow exhaust. When the flue goes down like this, that's less than positive. Okay? That's less than positive, and what that means is that, combustion exhaust can back up through this. That's what it means. All right, our pipe, our rusty gas pipe coming to the furnace. Okay, should have a sediment trap so that the impurities in the gas supply can drop down that little drip tube right there that we do not have. This gas connector should have been replaced because this system is about 11 years old. And 11 years ago when this was replaced, this should have been replaced because that's older than 11 years. You're always supposed to replace your gas connector when you replace an appliance. And these old school gray sheathed gas connectors are notorious. They haven't been acceptable for years and years. Those are notorious for leaking, notorious for having problems. So that should have been replaced. We should have had a drip line. Coming into the furnace, we do not have a connector for our electric cables coming in there. And we do not have grounding. We do not have grounding for our electrical, for our furnace. No electrical grounding. And plugging one in like this at one time was acceptable, but it no longer is. And using an extension cord like this as the power supply, that was never acceptable. So, I don't know what to say, except that, you got improper, ungrounded electric connection that's not been protected when it enters into the furnace. Okay, so that's our furnace. What did we learn? We learned that our ventilation is lacking. And we're going to move on to that. We learned that we do not have a proper air, makeup air. We learned that our flue has a negative pitch on it. We learned that we do not have a sediment trap and we got the wrong type of connector. We learned that we got the wrong type of electrical connector. We don't have grounding, and it doesn't have the connector on that. The connector doesn't have a connector. And that's why you want the roof, because look at all the insulation that's dropped down through there. Look at all that. That's not so good. All right, on the cooling system, we've got an evaporator coil here that is also 11 years old. This equipment's engineered on paper to last 20 years. It might last 35 years. But Las Vegas is going to give you 14. That doesn't mean that you have an 11-year-old system and then it's just going to die in 3 years. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that at all. So our thermostat, okay, all single-family homes should have at least one programmable thermostat. This home only has one thermostat, and it is not programmable. It also should be installed a little closer to your head, most people's heads, okay, because the whole idea is that no, I take that back. The thermostat's actually set where it's supposed to be, and in regard to its height. I apologize. I get ahead of myself. Okay, so this is the evaporator coil. We do not have a secondary drain line, an emergency drain line. We do not have a safety switch. This is the evaporator coil drain line should be the primary drain line. It does not have a P-trap, and it is not insulated. And then this is our air filter, and it's not that dirty, but they're always dirty. If this home was built this morning and it wasn't, this area underneath here would be lined with a metal pan to catch it, and it was not. It was not. This is your air return. It's too close to your furnace. Okay, this can be made right if we brought a tube down from the attic to about 6 inches from the floor. In fact, that's even worse. Are you serious? Okay. Coming down to the floor. People are texting me. My client, my dear client. Okay. So you should have a tube, a fresh air tube, coming down to about 6 inches from the floor. So you got makeup air and gas supply air. Right now, I was going to talk about this grill being too close, because any carbon monoxide that spills out of your furnace comes down here, gets sucked up through the air return because it's closer than 10 feet, gets rebroadcast through the system and distributed in equal qualities and quantities throughout the whole home, throughout the structure, and everybody goes to sleep at the same time. So I was going to like really get down on this door, and I still am. I don't want to change my mind about the door at all. But I'm in here trying to explain what's going on, and kind of looking at things twice. And there's a screen over here, I don't know if you can see it, and there's a hole that goes down to the return air plenum for the air conditioner. So that's where the combustible air is coming from. Is the return air is coming in. Oh my goodness. Coming through here, making everything go on fire and stuff. So if this thing spills carbon monoxide, it goes down in that hole, or it comes out the door and goes in this hole. Take your pick. It comes in from all kinds of different directions. Again, it gets broadcast through the house. So what do we learn? We learn that our door's not sealed properly. Okay? We learn that our closet's not ventilated properly, especially, lots of considerations, but the floor. We learn that the hole is leaking carbon monoxide, the hole in the ceiling. We learned that our flue doesn't have proper pitch on it, doesn't have a thimble. We learned that we got the wrong kind of gas connector. We do not have a sediment trap. We learned that we do not have electrical grounding. We learned that we got the wrong kind of electric supply cord. We do not have a switch. Today this would be switched. You wouldn't just plug it in. We learned that we do not have a connector. We learned that we do not have a care and use manual. We learned that we do not have a sediment trap. Well, it's a sediment trap for the gas line. We learned that we do not have a P-trap for the drain line. We learned that we do not have a secondary switch, a safety switch, or because we wouldn't have a pan with an updraft system like this. We also learned that our return air plenum didn't have, a pan was not installed in our return plenum, and nor was one required.